Hello and welcome to another episode of Hoop Thoughts, the most self-explanatory podcast on the internet. In today's episode, we've got a lot of fun stuff on the docket. Another installment of Real or Not Real. We started that one for the first time in the last episode. It's pretty self-explanatory. Real or Not Real is a pretty simple concept. You just take a look at some of the trends that have started in the opening couple weeks of the NBA and try and determine whether something is going to last or not. We're also just going to talk general hoops, and I'm going to introduce a new segment called Game of the Week. All of these segments are pretty self-explanatory so far. I'm not trying to do anything crazy, but I do want to try and make this a more entertaining show. Before I actually get into anything, I'm sorry I didn't upload a video last week. I actually am recovering from the flu. In the third episode of Nets Franchise that's going to go up in the next couple of days here, I sound pretty sick in that episode. And at the end of the day, I mean, there's not much I can do. So because we missed last week's episode, there's a lot more to talk about. First of all, off the top, the thing that comes to mind the most is just how many injuries there have been to start the year. Paul George and Embiid for the 76ers have been struggling to ease their way back in at the start of the season. We're both recovering from I'm actually not sure what Joel Embiid is recovering from. He played in the Olympics. Maybe he's just resting to start the year. I don't really know. Paul George had an injury last season in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure. But so the Sixers have been dealing with some injuries, and now Tyrese Maxey goes down, which is unfortunate. Obviously, the Boston Celtics have been without Kristaps Porzingis and are going to continue to be probably until Christmas. Jaylen Brown's been missing a lot of games for them as well. He's dealing with a hip flexor issue. By the time this goes up, he might be playing in Sunday's game against Milwaukee. He's questionable right now, but there's been a lot of injuries. Zion missed opening night. Paolo, after his pretty good start to the year, ended up, I think it was an oblique injury. Probably wrong about that. But it's just been rough. It's been very brutal. I mean, the Pelicans have had serious injury problems like the whole year. They're definitely one of those cursed franchises that just never seems to be able to stay healthy. Just a lot of unfortunate injuries to start the year. I feel like it happens every year, but at the same time, I don't know. It feels very unusual, just the quality of the star players that are getting hurt. But I will say at the same time, it's interesting to see guys like Cade and LaMelo actually have healthy starts to the year. Knock on wood that keeps up for them. Not trying to wish injuries on anybody, but it's just an unfortunate reality of basketball. That's the fun part about the opening season is that you typically have everybody at full strength, and then once the wear and tear of the season starts to come along, then you start to get into that mid January, February, where a lot of guys are out and missing time. So everybody kind of comes back by playoff time usually, if it's not too serious, but that's what we're hoping for this year. Just an interesting trend to note at the start of the year. Another thing I wanted to mention was the injury or health concerns with Greg Popovich. The Spurs are using an interim head coach right now while we're waiting to see what's going on with Pop. I don't know if he's going to be okay. It's really interesting because in the first episode of this new season, I made a bunch of hot takes, bold predictions, however you want to call it. One of my predictions was going to be that Pop was going to be retiring after this season, which obviously I wasn't expecting, like an injury. I ended up not making that one of the hot takes because he has an extension. I think it's like 3 more years, something like that. So obviously he's not planning on retiring anytime soon. But yeah, rest up. Great coach, all time, one of the best ever, if not the best to ever do it. So I hope he gets well and is able to come back and coach as soon as possible. Would be great. All right, and now we're going to get into Real or Not Real, a segment that's sort of new to the show, so we'll definitely give it a minute to kind of establish itself. I do have a lot of different ideas, especially when we get to mid-season and in the off-season, a lot of different segments to keep the show fresh and interesting. So if you are enjoying these things, thank you. Appreciate it. And without further ado, we're going to get into the first real or not real, which would be the Golden State Warriors start to the NBA season. Last year, they started 6-1, I believe, and obviously they didn't end up making it out of the play-in. So we have to determine, is this Warriors start real or not real? It's a tough one for me. I think the difference between this start and last year's start would be, they were 3-0 without Steph Curry. So that's a pretty big sign of, a good roster is when they can win without their best player. Although Curry has not looked like the Stephen Curry we've been accustomed to seeing. So that's obviously not a great sign. If I were to pick one, I'm going to say that the start is not real. But I don't think that the Golden State Warriors are going to be as bad as they were last year. I think they're going to be a lot better than mid. I think they'll definitely have a playoff spot. I just don't see them being like a top 4 seed. The West is incredibly competitive, but I do think they're playing an interesting style of basketball. They are definitely trying to find an identity. Replacing Klay Thompson with Buddy Hield seems to be, so far, a pretty good move. So I think when you look at the Golden State Warriors, they're never dead. It's the dynasty lives on. I think the fact that Klay left last offseason really just showed like how it may be all coming to an end. And I'm sure that Curry and Draymond have had, conversations together with the team of just, this is kind of it. Like, you got to make one or two like pushes here. And at the end of the day, the window is closing if it hasn't already, had the door shut in their face. So we'll see. The season is going to be long for sure. They've got plenty of time to figure it out. I don't think they have the star power to compete for a title, but I do think that Steph Curry can, return to what we saw from him last year and not be completely washed. You're going to see pretty high win totals for them. The second team that we're going to look at, real or not real, the Cleveland Cavaliers, starting 10-0 on the season. I'm going to say it's real. I like the Kenny Atkinson hire. I definitely didn't talk a lot about it, admittedly. Somebody on Twitter pointed it out, but I kind of forgot that he was from that like Warrior system, and they're playing that type of ball movement. Like, I love it. I love the way that they're playing right now. The ball movement is great. The defensive effort is great. They've got a lot of good players, and I think when you get into that situation where Donovan Mitchell is trying to do it all himself and he gets into that, ISO heavy play style, it's not great for the team. Darius Garland struggled last year. He's having a way better year this year, so that's huge, instrumental, I would say, in their success. And I think Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, guys like that, especially if you can stay healthy. Cavs had health issues all throughout last year. I don't think they're going to win, 73 games. I would say they could definitely crack 60. They're probably going to be in the high 50s, low 60s in win total. I don't think they're going to be like the runaway best record in the league. But if we're talking about is their start real or not real, I'm going to say their start is real. Next up, real or not real, the Phoenix Suns start to the NBA season. In the first episode, where we made all of those preseason predictions, I predicted that Mike Budenholzer would be the coach of the year. That prediction is not looking horrible, although I do think Kenny Atkinson would probably, I don't know, it's going to be hard to see. There's definitely a lot of early competitors for the Coach of the Year award. There is definitely a strong possibility, the way that the Suns have started, that they could be pretty good in the West. I mean, last year, you look at it, they were like 47 wins or something like that, and they were like all the way down to the 6th seed, ended up having to play, obviously, the 3rd seeded Timberwolves, if I'm not mistaken, and that obviously didn't go great for them. They didn't play as bad in that series as it may have looked. They did get swept, though, and at the end of the day, if you can't win a single game with 3 really, really good players, things need to change. So obviously they fire Frank Vogel, they hire Mike Budenholzer, they get Tyus Jones, super underrated pickup. His playmaking ability is awesome. He isn't doing anything crazy. It's not like he's, running around like Chris Paul out there, but he knows how to get guys the ball. He knows how to play smart, and they needed that type of facilitating to kind of unlock Bradley Beal more than anything. I think Devin Booker is a great ball handler. I think he's a great facilitator. Book's playmaking ability definitely allows for him to be at the one if needed. But I think when you look at the way that the team needs to play, especially when you have Yusuf Nurkic out there, those five guys gel together really well. Ryan Dunn has been amazing. Great rookie production from him. Love to see that. Huge impact that he's already having. So they've got a lot to like. They still got Grayson Allen. He's a good role player. They've locked him up with an extension last year. I believe it was right before the playoffs. So, yeah, Phoenix is real. I'm going to say Phoenix is real because at the end of the day, there's too much talent there for them not to be. I think especially when you look at the regression to teams like the Clippers, in that middle part, teams that were seeded higher than Phoenix last year, I think Phoenix can return to what they were doing previously, something they were known for, taking the regular season really seriously, winning a lot of regular season games. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're going to win the finals. I don't think they're that real, but I don't think the start is fraudulent by any means. And the final real or not real for this segment is going to be Derek White averaging 20 points per game. Currently, that is what his averages are, and I love Derek White. He's my guy, for sure. I am going to say this is not real. I don't think that Derek White is a 20-point per game average type of guy. I'm not saying that Derek couldn't average 20 if he was in like a Cam Thomas position where there's not a lot of guys ahead of him, looking to shoot the ball. But if you look at the roster that Boston has, they got Kristaps Porzingis coming back in a month or so. Jaylen Brown's been missing games here and there. I just think in general, Derek White's being asked a lot of him right now that he won't be offensively. I think he'll be a lot more efficient as the season rolls around, and as the games go by, I definitely think we'll see his, shot fall at the same rate on less attempts, just because he's going to have to do a lot less shot creating. He's going to be getting easier looks because, Jaylen Brown isn't going to be missing time anymore. But at the end of the day, I don't think Derek White averages 20 points per game this year. I just don't think that's real. It is cool, and it is really important that he is doing it right now. He's been producing for sure. To start the year, it's been awesome to help keep Boston afloat while they're missing two of their top three scorers. Obviously, they've still got Jason Tatum, but Derek White is doing his thing right now. I just can't say that I expect it to continue given his role when the team is fully healthy. Moving on, we're just going to get into some general hoop thoughts that I have. One, I think the Bucks are cooked. Like, they're done. I don't think they're completely done. Like, they're never going to, make the playoffs again. That's insane. The East is way too weak for them to miss the playoffs. But I don't think Milwaukee is that title type of contending team. They've obviously had a rough schedule to start the year. Milwaukee can't beat New York. They don't have the matchups. Obviously, Dame and Giannis are great, but when you take away Dame and Giannis, what else do you have? Bobby Portis is getting shipped out as we speak by every fan. Brook Lopez is just not the same guy that he was a couple of years ago. He's obviously, older. Age is definitely causing him to, become a little bit less dependable. And it all makes sense. We said this about Milwaukee since they traded for Dame. You lose a guy like Drew Holiday who does a lot for you on the defensive end. You don't want him to be the second option on your team. Chris Middleton's health and overall lack thereof has caused a lot of issues for Milwaukee, and obviously they're still missing Middleton here and there to start the year. I mean, Middleton's knees are cooked. He was the certified number 2 on that championship-winning team, and obviously you're not going to be able to see that out of him. In the offseason, Bradley Beal went on a podcast and said that there were talks that he would get traded for Chris Middleton, which would have been insane. So I don't think there's any doubt to the fact that they're probably going to shop him. I just don't know what you go get. Something that I thought about the other day was maybe, the way that Nikola Vucevic is playing for the Bulls. Maybe the Bulls look to shop him at some point, maybe deadline time. Chicago shops Levine and, Vucevic. But at the end of the day, like, they realistically could be like a team that sneaks into the playoffs, like low key. They could be the like 8th seed. Like maybe they could be the 10th seed that fights their way into the 8th seed through the play-in tournament or something like that. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Chicago does. Obviously, they don't own all of their picks, so I can understand why they might not want to just fully rebuild. But Vucevic is a great player. I think he fits well with Milwaukee. Obviously, Giannis is a great player. I think him and Vucevic's games complement one another. Giannis can kind of play more inside and guard the paint, and Vucevic is a good scorer, a good three-point shooter at this point in his career. Obviously, an okay passer, and he's a good rebounder. He gets rebounds. That's something that is really important in the game of basketball. You can't give up offensive rebounds when you're playing defense. That just kills you, and you need to be able to grab some offensive rebounds of your own. I mean, getting out rebounded and getting out hustled is something that is not new to the Bucks. They have awesome players in Dame and Giannis, but you need more. You need guys that complement them. I think someone that could set good screens for Dame. I mean, Vucevic just fits pretty seamlessly in there. So that's a move that I think they could make. You would love to see some bench scoring for them. I don't know where they would go get that exactly. Probably shouldn't have just tried to think about this on the fly. So I'm not going to try and come up with any other trade candidates for him, but I think they're going to try and, shake things up pretty early in the season. Not a great start to the year. Doc Rivers is obviously not a great NBA coach at this point in his career. It's funny, people are joking now that the 2008 Celtics team is the best team of all time because it's the only team that was able to win a championship while Doc Rivers was coaching them. So that's kind of funny to me. But in reality, it is actually like kind of concerning given the amount of talent that Doc Rivers has had to work with over the years. The fact that he's only coached one championship team, it's definitely a little underwhelming, especially when you consider how many blown leads he's had along the way as well. But yeah, Milwaukee is definitely cooked. I don't think they're contenders given the state of their roster. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to fleece some teams or really, package their assets and get a whole lot better. They have a lot of aging players. They do have some good young players. I like Andre Jackson a lot. He's a great glue guy, but they need the scoring, and I think they really miss Malik Beasley as much as they don't want to admit that. Gary Trent Jr. has not been serviceable the way that you needed him to be. He doesn't really provide that punch that you were looking for to replace Malik Beasley. So that's definitely disappointing. Pat Connaughton is also just not a good enough NBA player to be getting the minutes that he's getting. It's just the productivity of everyone outside of Dame and Giannis is really not where it needs to be. I think Bobby Portis is someone that goes in a trade, probably Brook Lopez as well, and whatever future draft capital they have, because at the end of the day, you have Dame and Giannis, and you need to surround them with something. The only other thing I can really think about that I wanted to talk about for this episode was I wanted to make the case for Tatum winning the MVP award. There's obviously a lot of online discourse about the MVP award already. If you missed all of the other episodes of this show, you obviously don't know that I had Tatum as my MVP prediction going into this season. I think he can do it. I really do. He's obviously started off the season amazingly. But if you look at the records of the other teams of the MVP favorites right now, like Jokic and AD, Donovan Mitchell, obviously, and Kevin Durant are in that conversation as well right now, but neither of those guys have the numbers that Jason Tatum has. So you look at guys that have better numbers than Tatum, their teams are sitting around 500. So if the Celtics continue to win games at the pace that they're winning games, right, they're a mid-60s, high 60s win team, and Jason Tatum averages like 38, 6, and 2 steals a game. How is he not going to win the MVP award? I mean, his jumper looks way better, by the way. Let's start there. The jump shot has been huge. And I think that when you look at percentages last year to this year, you might not see a huge change, but especially the latter of the last end of the season into the playoffs, Jason Tatum's jumper just didn't look smooth. It looked like there was a hitch in it. He didn't look confident in it. Now it's kind of the only thing that's holding his game together. He's been obviously not great attacking the basket this year. He's been okay, but just efficiency-wise, he was a lot better last year, especially layups around the rim. He is getting fouled a lot, and they're not calling it, like getting hit on the arm and such. He does whine about it sometimes, but at the end of the day, he's okay. He's a reasonable guy about how he's being officiated, and the only times that he really ever freaks out is when he's objectively right and they missed a call. He's also playing just so much better defensively. Obviously, sometimes he checks out of the game. He doesn't hustle back in transition here and there. You can nitpick his game all you want, but he's playing great defense. He's passing the ball so well. You saw it in the playoffs last year when his shot wasn't falling. He was getting guys open looks. I mean, he was playmaking down the stretch. The sick behind the back pass to Horford against Indiana in one of those games where they were making a run late. Last night against Brooklyn, he had an incredible game. He's had like 32 potential assists in the last 2 games, and he only came away with 8. So if you're not, quick with math, that means his teammates on shots that he is creating for them are shooting 25% in the last 2 games combined. So hopefully he'll continue playmaking the way that he is. I mean, he's always been a great decision maker, but especially now with the ball in his hands a little bit more, no JB, no KP, Celtics are still 8-2. Obviously, you had an awkward overtime loss to Indiana where you were down like 20, but then you came back and made it a game, and then you let it go in overtime. And then the home loss to Golden State, no JB, no KP. I mean, it is what it is. Golden State was rolling that game. But Jason Tatum himself has had pretty much just one rough game, and I think that was against Milwaukee in the first week of the season. But other than that, I mean, he's been stinker-free. Obviously, knock on wood that he plays well against Milwaukee on Sunday. This hopefully will be going up a bit before, but if it doesn't, it's going to go out after the game. So if he had a stinker, oops, my bad, but I don't think he will. I think he's been playing just exactly how you want him to play. He's obviously getting trigger happy with the 3. You probably don't want him to settle as much as he is, but if the jumper's falling, at the end of the day, you just kind of have to deal with it. It's more about finding his shot within the offense and making sure he's not forcing shots while still making sure that he gets the touches that he deserves. Something that Tatum has been doing incredibly well to start the year is scoring in the first quarter. Typically, in the years past, Jaylen Brown has been the Celtics' go-to option in the first quarter. Jason was kind of the closer, someone that you look at in more of the second half. He would start a lot of games with, under 10 points at the half and then kind of finish to get to like the mid-20s. But now he's kind of having games where he starts out and gets 25 by halftime, especially when he's only playing 3 quarters some of the time. When the full Celtics team is healthy, I mean, that's really just realistically what's going to happen. The team is too dominant with Jason Tatum at the helm and everybody else cooking. But you see him with Jaylen Brown, out of the lineup, how well he is still elevating the teammates around him. I mean, he's getting Al Horford and Sam Hauser, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, guys like that. Even Jordan Walsh at times has benefited off of, Jason Tatum kickouts. And if Tatum attacks the hole and swings it to somebody, I mean, some of the plays that he was making against Brooklyn, which we'll talk about in a second, they were just incredible. Talking specifically about Jason Tatum and his MVP case, again, I think if we're talking about him as a guy who leads the league in points because he's just going to play the most games out of the guys that are scoring the ball right now, I mean, maybe Jokic. Jokic just isn't that level of a scorer, and he also does a lot more of everything. His game is very balanced. I think Jokic is going to suffer from the voter fatigue, same way Giannis did, same way LeBron did, and I think Jason Tatum can capitalize on that and really come out of the gates hot like he has, but you can't flame out. He's got to average 30. He's got to get the rebounds up. You got to pad the stats, but if he is, winning games with Boston the way, that they have the last year or so, the stats might look a little less inflated than someone like Jokic, who is playing a lot more fourth quarters. I think it's okay to say that Jason Tatum can be the most valuable player, even though his team around him is really good. He is still the engine of this incredibly dominant offense. He is still the reason that the team is winning as often as they are. And again, it's the stats that he's got right now. If he can just maintain that, he's going to look really good in March and February when we're looking at, all right, who's going to actually take this home. To close out the show, I have a new segment that I want to introduce called Game of the Week. And it's something that I'm going to try to do pretty much every week. I obviously watch all the Celtics games. I'm a Celtics fan first before an NBA fan. But I do watch a lot of NBA games. So I do, try and make sure, especially on the nights the Celtics aren't playing or, whatever the primetime game around 10 o'clock is, to make sure that if there is a good NBA, game on, that I want to recap it. Now, for this week, we're going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets game that happened on Friday night with the Boston Celtics, because I have not gotten to watch a ton of NBA basketball this week, at least aside from the games that the Celtics played. This game was a pretty fun game. Through and through, the Nets definitely took their moments, and I think they were leading at halftime by like 11, if I'm not mistaken, but that might have been the Golden State game. Yeah, that was definitely the Golden State game, which the Golden State game, honestly, might be a better contender for Game of the Week, but my Game of the Week isn't going to be one that the Celtics lost in, so sorry, but that game was pretty awesome too. I'm going to go with the Nets game for a couple of reasons. One, it went to overtime, so that makes it slightly better than the Golden State game. And then also, I just thought that Cam Thomas, in general, just by himself, made the game just that much more engaging. It was very back and forth. I think that, when you look at the Nets, they're an interesting team because everyone's kind of expecting them to be tanking this year, but so far, they've had a pretty 500-y start to the year. They can grit out some wins. It's really going to be about effort with them, but I like their coach. Apparently the first Spanish-born coach in NBA history. I don't know if that means like the only coach that was born in Spain, but either way, that's still like a crazy fact to me. Jordi Fernandez, if I'm not mistaken, is his name. I thought he coached a pretty good game against Boston. He had a couple of really good timeout calls, but he gets his guys to play hard. They were actually out hustling and rebounding the Celtics for a good majority of the game. It's a lot about effort with him, and obviously you lose Mikal Bridges. That's not great, but they've recovered from that. Obviously they got a lot of draft capital, but draft capital doesn't play until, you make the picks. So with what they've got right now, what they're working with, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, shout out the Nets. Obviously, if you're not familiar with the channel, you don't know this, but I do have a 2K series right now that I'm doing with the Brooklyn Nets, running their franchise on NBA 2K25. So that was pretty cool to see them. I like their players a lot. There's really nobody on the team that I dislike. Jason Tatum definitely has beef with Nick Claxton. I don't know if we remember in the 2022 playoffs when the Celtics swept Brooklyn, but there was a time in that, first game or two where Claxton kind of comes off on a screen and picks Tatum up, and he kind of bumps him, undercuts him while he's shooting, fouls him, and Tatum takes that mismatch so personally. Every time they go to head-to-head, you see Tatum, and he just hunts it, and he's looking for Claxton. He loves to shoot over him, which is so funny because you're like watching it, and you're like, okay, dude, you have a center on you. Please drive on him. You're faster. You're as big, and you're faster. Please go by him. And he's like, tween, puts up a three, and then it goes in, and you can't even be mad because it's just so awesome. I love Jason Tatum. Obviously, that's my guy, but you want to see him attack the hole a little bit more. Definitely a good game for Drew Holiday. I guess it's more just like in the playoffs, you saw him take a huge leap, and I haven't seen a ton from him to start the year. Nothing more than what you already expect. He is getting a little older, but I still look at Drew Holiday as a great, piece of this dominant Celtics starting lineup. So I think Pritchard off the bench was huge. I believe he had 20 points. He's having 6 Man of the Year level contributions so far, so that's been awesome from Pritch. But overtime was really what I wanted to focus on. And just before overtime, too, Tatum gets the set that they love to run where he's in the backcourt, and then he kind of runs up court, and they get it to him on the bounce, and then he just kind of takes it to the hole. He sent a game to overtime against Cleveland. I think it was 2 years ago, something like that. And he's done it a couple of times, but he gets the 2 to put them up, give them the lead, but then he fouls Cam Johnson. They're in the bonus, 2 free throws, tie game, misses the 3 to go to OT. I really wanted him to hit it. I was telling everybody, I was on Twitter texting like I'm like, he's going to hit this game winner. And then he does the thing that he always does, which is just, dribbles the ball out and then just shoots a 3 that everybody knows is coming. I would love to see Tatum get a little bit more creative at the end of a game. You don't want to see him just chuck up a 3. At the end of the day, it didn't matter, but you'd like to see better shot selection if you're going for game. Always in a tie game, you want to take it to the basket. That's always a more efficient way to try and play. But anyway, it goes to overtime. They play really good defense. Tatum had a huge block on Cam Thomas that really mattered down the stretch. He hit a pretty tough fadeaway too to give them the lead, and then it kind of was just the Nets fouling from there, and that seals the game. 108-104 victory for Boston, and that is our game of the week. I don't really have a ton else to talk about for this episode. I'm trying to get these around the 30-minute mark. I guess really quickly, something that I wanted to talk about would be the Los Angeles Lakers. I've seen a lot of different stuff from JJ Redick in his post-game interviews. He's trying so hard to be like Joe Mazzulla. Like, he really is trying. Like, it's super weird that people aren't, like, hating on him for it. I don't think he deserves hate. I'm just saying that, like, this is the type of situation that people would hate on pretty much anybody else. Like, let's say Steve Nash for the Brooklyn Nets did that, in a post-game when he was coaching them. I think he would get some flack for it. So I don't know. He's trying to steal Joe Mazzulla's flow. They're 500 again. Like, it's definitely not great right now with D'Lo. You can tell he's definitely the odd man out. You just have too much ball handling already. Reeves and Braun, AD's being a lot more aggressive now and taking a lot more shots. If AD's gunning for MVP, it's really hard to see where someone like D'Angelo Russell fits into all that. Obviously, last year, you see a lot of moments with D'Lo where he's kind of checked out. He didn't get in the huddle that one time. Obviously, it's hard, to say with Darvin Ham as your coach. You probably, aren't super checked in. But I think D'Lo probably is going to get shipped. That's why I'm one thing that if he doesn't, he should. Pelinka's probably looking to shop him. I'm sure JJ Redick has talked with Pelinka of just, this is what we need to do to be a competitive roster. I'm sure he's going to let Pelinka do his job, but at the end of the day, it's on Rob to get Redick more talent to work with. I think it'll be interesting to see what teams like the Blazers and the Wizards do with their talent. Guys like Rob Williams, DeAndre Ayton, Jordan Poole, they're all, Kyle Kuzma even return to LA would be interesting. So there's a lot of guys out there that are kind of in their mid-20s where you can kind of look at them as capable of contributing already to a roster that's got championship aspirations. The Lakers with LeBron and AD are always going to be gunning for a championship. Cam Johnson on the Nets would be an insanely good fit for LA, especially if they want to run point guard Braun. You'd have Braun, Reeves, Johnson, Hachimura, and Davis. I mean, that would be sick. That would be a sick roster. So maybe D'Lo goes back to Brooklyn for a reunion there. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can look at. I think Brooklyn is the type of team that probably doesn't need D'Angelo Russell the way Dennis Schroeder's playing, but I don't know, maybe it could be a 3-teamer that ships him somewhere else. All I know is that the Lakers are definitely in need of those wings. You need that defense, especially when you look at LeBron in his age. You can only expect so much out of him. He's been playing great to start the year for sure, but you can tell there's going to be off nights for him, especially now that he's like 40 years old. I mean, the fact that he can still average high 20 point per game at all is insane. But his playmaking ability is awesome. The defense has really just always been about effort. When he needs to, he can always lock in on defense. But the way AD's playing, the Lakers should be, in a better record standing than they are. So that's something to look at. It's something to monitor. JJ Redick is a good NBA coach. I mean, the way that the Lakers are playing is so much better under him than it is under Darvin Ham. But at the end of the day, it needs to contribute to wins. At the end of the day, the Lakers fans need somebody who is going to lead that team. And, if JJ Redick's the guy, then he's got to, get all hands on deck and really start carving out some wins here. But that is going to do it for the show today. I hope these new segments are fun, kind of bring something to the show. I'm really trying to get creative here and have a little fun with it. So yeah, if you enjoyed the Game of the Week segment, Real or Not Real, back again. These things are things that I try and put time and effort into, So if you enjoy it, I really appreciate it. But that's all I've got for you. I will catch all of you in the next one. Take care.